Alright guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's been a little bit since I've posted. I've been farming up on MR. It kind of hit a slow point because it's all the boring stuff that is a nuisance to do, so I figured I'd take a little break and do some Eidolon hunting. And I figured might as well make another video as well and show what I use to Eidolon hunt. So one of the things that used to occur was that in nighttime in the Plains of Eidolon, Mirage's third ability, her Eclipse, always reflected that it was dark, that she was standing in shadows, so she always got a damage reduction. But they changed it so that the light from Lua says that she's standing in the light. So yeah, you can Eidolon hunt with Mirage now, and you don't need to do anything fancy, you don't need to do anything special, just use her. So I figured I would share the build that I have for her. And this build does have some Arcanes attached to it, but that makes it easier. And this is a 2 Forma build, but it's not the most expensive thing in the world. It does use a little bit of the helmet system, which I will get into in a moment, but the basic build, rifle amp, of course, because you're using a rifle, not a sniper amp, and you will see why. The rifle amp is because I am using the Chakkhurr, which is a rifle, not a sniper. You'll see in a moment how all that works out. Narrow-minded for a little bit of duration. I like having some duration on my builds. On my other one for my general build, I have almost 300% duration and a lot lower strength. But on this build, you want to push your strength as high as possible for just 1 taps. That's it. That's what you want. Because you can always recast. If you're just popping limbs consistently, repetitively, one by one, over, then you don't need to worry about how long it stays up because you will always have energy accessible to you. Efficiency and range. Range doesn't matter. And then efficiency, it's whatever. All of these abilities are pretty cheap to cast because you're not using your second. You're not using sleight of hand, and you wouldn't be using your fourth. I completely forget what it's called right now because I barely... Prism. There we go. And you wouldn't be using Prism, which is why I replaced it with Empower. But her second, Mirage's second and Mirage's first are what you use predominantly, each of which costing about 40 energy, comboing with Empower. You can round it to about 120 energy, which is only half of her overall energy pool at 225. So you don't need that much duration, which is why I use Narrow-Minded and Transient Fortitude with Blind Rage, because this gives you that little bit of duration. This amps up your strength. This really amps up your strength and vitality for a little bit of survival, along with Umbral Intensify for more power strength. And then, finally comboing that off with Augur Secrets to give a 348% strength. This can go higher. If I get Umbral Fiber on here as well, which would require more Formas, I think at least 1 Umbral Forma, if not 2. This can go to 350 something, 360 something, I want to say. But the overall damage buff that you get is like 818%, I want to say. So mine's a little bit below that, but that's alright. So that's the general build. I have Karnus Carapace on here because it just gives a little extra armor and HP, a personal quality of life thing, and then Exilus slot, Power Drift, again, little extra ability strength, and that chance to resist knockdown. It's not for the knockdown chance, it's for the power strength chance. Again, this entire build is just capping your power strength. That is what this build is about. And you don't really need to worry about any of your other stats, armor, HP, or shields, because if you're doing Eidolon hunting right, then doesn't matter how much you have, it should be a very straightforward, very easy hunt. Arcanes, these help a lot, and you'll see why in a moment. On damaged, 21% chance for crit chance. You will still take damage at some point throughout here, whether it be through the laser beams, through the patches of grass, whatever it may be. So it's nice to at least have a chance for low extra crit. And then Arcane Rage on a headshot, you have 15% chance for almost 200% extra primary weapon damage. You can always shoot the head of the Eidolon when they're down on a knee or when they're in their roar, when they're laying down on the ground, and it's 24 seconds as well. So realistically, you can have a flat 100% of the time extra 200% damage on top of the damage buff that you will get from this build. So this is my Mirage Prime build, and I originally made this for the HEMA and saw that I could be uh, doubly used for the Eidolon hunting as well. So that's the Mirage build. Your secondary and your melee don't really matter, so I just leave these from my main build. And then Kuva Chakkhurr. So the Kuva Chakkhurr is the new, I guess you could say, predominant king for Eidolon hunting. The reason being is that you can create a build with it very easily, very straight up, very quickly, that regardless on whether you're using it for Eidolon hunting or not, will use Serration. And what's so powerful about Serration is that when comboed with Chroma, it does not work as intended. There's some interaction where scaling in damage inverts the effect or negates the effect of Serration, so the 165% damage buff that you get from it, it's null and void. It might as well not exist. Which is a huge detriment when using something like the Rubico or the Lanka way back when. But with Mirage, since it's just a flat buff, there's no scaling, none of that, Serration is fantastic. This is a pretty basic build in my opinion because I enjoy modding for radiation for armored enemies and then of course crit. The Chakkhurr has a ridiculous base crit chance of, and let's get that number where it's not red, a ridiculous base crit chance of 50 with a 2.3 multiplier. That is absolutely insane when it comes to crit chance on weapons. So with a very easy loadout, no Riven as you can see. This is a Rivenless build as well. With no Riven, I'm hitting 125% crit chance, so guaranteed yellow crits with frequent orange crits, and then if your team is running right, it should be guaranteed red crits all the time, with a 5 times damage multiplier. So, quickly run through split chamber for multi-shot, easy pick, heavy caliber, because accuracy doesn't matter that much. You're going to be having Mirage's clones or Hall of Mirrors, so you'll have a lot of pellets going to a single location, easy. So essentially, that there's just a base damage increase. And I'll show you a little demonstration as to what I mean with that in a moment. Vital Sense for crit damage, 120%. Point Strike for crit chance, 150%. So one mod is taking the crit chance from 50 to 125. Huge, huge buff. Vigilante armaments for multi-shot, and then vigilante supplies, both for the ammo conversion, and that little extra chance to enhance crit hits from primary weapons. Now, Hellfire and Stormbringer. These two mods I use for the radiation, because I like radiation, armored enemies are typically what I'm going up against, and status chance doesn't really matter against Eidolons. People say that it does, people say that it doesn't. It's kind of an iffy here or there. But I put this on there for a general build. You personally could more or less put whatever you want on there, but I recommend doing radiation, just because it's what I'm most comfortable on. So now we'll show you well, let me finish the build real quick. And the last part of it is that since you're doing DPS, you will usually be doing Inaru in your focus schools. Within this entire focus school, you don't need a lot. The main thing that you need is this, Inaru Wisp. Void Blast has a 100% chance to summon a Wisp when it damages an enemy. The Wisp can be picked up by allies to increase operator damage by 100% for 12 seconds. Essentially what that means is you can climb up onto the little hip or the leg of the Eidolon and just guarantee that your teammates guarantee um, that your Volt, your Trinity, your Harrow, whomever it is, gets that double damage so that they can then shoot through a Volt shield and insta-pop the Eidolon shields. But focus schools are something you worry about later, not early game. So real quick, let me show you the difference specifically that heavy caliber makes, because on paper it's taking away 75% of your accuracy. So if we take the Chakkhurr, and then just on a wall here, an open spot in the sunlight, doesn't really show up well, but it's very condensed, very close together. I'll show you a demonstration with Hall of Mirrors, a little more dispersed, but at a range, they're all going a little bit to the same target. You can notice that they are veering off to the side, but the main shot is always going directly there. So now, also, it veering has to do with Mirage's Hall of Mirrors. They should all target the exact same location, but it's finicky as you would imagine anything is. So again, this is with decreased accuracy. It's the exact same, maybe you notice that it's a bit thicker, but that's because of the multi-shot. So there is zero detriment to using heavy caliber on your Kuva Chakkhurr. Now, I will demonstrate very quickly the difference that all these make. Base with buff, and then with Hall of Mirrors as well. So base, shooting him in the face, you see that multi-shot coming into effect. One shot put that Leech Eximus. Okay, here, hold on. Let me get rid of my cat. That is my mistake. Cat's having an impact. Alright. Alright, get rid of you. Alright. Oh. And I do like using the Corrupted Heavy Gun or Eximus because to me they are more difficult than regular enemies. So, base demonstration. They're standing up, but the damage that's being done is significant. Few shots straight to the head and doing significant damage. Now, that is with zero buff. Those are level 170s, very heavily armored, and Eximus, and it is doing a lot of damage. Keeps resetting that. So, alright. So now, let me just double check that everything's on the right build. Yes. Alright, so now, I'll demonstrate just with the damage buff. There's nothing here. Okay. My simulacrum's broken. Pretty sure what that is. Alright, there we go. So now I'll just demonstrate with a base damage buff. So, Empowered gives a 50% buff to what Eclipse does. So it puts my damage buff from a 666 up to almost an 800% damage buff, and it one-shots. Now this is one target at a time, but at the same time, look at how much damage it's doing straight to the head on a headshot. So now, I'll demonstrate the power that it has with Hall of Mirrors active. And that was a terrible flick, but okay. But case in point, these are Heavy Gunner Eximus, and they are being red crit and demolished like they are nothing. These are level 170, highly armored enemies that are, in my opinion at least, much stronger than even the Eidolons. So, so yeah, that is the build that I use for whenever I'm doing Eidolon DPS. And a very useful feature that I found as well is that if I push my right stick, but essentially on the top here, above uh, all your options, you can set specific loadouts for whenever you want to run through something specific, so you immediately have access to it. So for me, what I can do, here, let me put my companion back on. But what I can do is, let's just say that I want to do my default loadout, which I keep on Zaku with, where's Zeneric? Zeneric and my Brahma, right? If I get invited to an Eidolon hunt, instead of changing everything around, modifying all this and that, I push a stick, click Eidolon DPS, and there you go. The entire build's ready. Then when I'm done, push it again, go back to default loadout. Instantly. No hesitation, no problems whatsoever. So this, again, this is the build that I use for Mirage. It's the build that I find most useful, and the build that I find most powerful as well. This, again, with a proper team where you're just one popping shields and one popping a limb, consistently, you should be red critting all the time. So many of your shots should just hit the target, insta pop it, and move on. Hit the head, you get that damage buff. Easy. So, I know this has been a bit longer of a video, but this is something that I felt I should cover in depth because a lot of things have changed since Eidolon hunting in the past. So, thank you all for watching. I'll hopefully have another Eidolon hunting video up for the other roles shortly, but here you go on this one. Oh, last thing before I forget real quick. Normally what you do with Eidolon hunting is there are different roles to what everyone does. DPS gets the first lure, and then everyone else follows suit. So I'll do a more comprehensive video on how all of that works later. But for now, this is Eidolon Hunting Mirage. Straight and simple.